My mom made us weigh ourselves twice every morning because the first reading might be wrong and took away love based on the number. When I asked her why she did this to us, she pinched my stomach and said, "Look at your sister. She understands that beauty requires sacrifice." I just stared at her. That was 10 years ago. Today, she's in maximum security after they raided her home. After I turned 8 and my older sister Chloe was 9, my mother became the most weight-obsessed beach I've ever met. Every morning started with stepping on the scale twice, because the first reading might be wrong. If either of us gained even half a pound, we'd lose privileges like watching TV or playing outside. The rule was simple. The heavier you were, the less love you deserved. Well, I myself couldn't stand the hunger. It was like I couldn't think about any other than food. So I found a way to secretly eat crackers in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Chloe became mom's perfect little skeleton. Her nightly routine consisted of jumping jacks for 2 hours from 8 to 10 p.m. She'd chew food just for the taste, then spit it into napkins that she'd shove behind radiators at school. Like, what in the bombo plate? And instead of our mom getting her help, she rewarded her even more. When Chloe hit 65 pounds at age 12, mom took her on a $2,000 shopping spree at the mall. Designer jeans in size 00, crop tops to show off her jutting ribs, anything she wanted. "Look at your sister," mom would tell me while pinching my stomach. She understands that beauty requires sacrifice. I so desperately wanted to be the girl who didn't need anyone or anything. But the truth is, I wasn't. So I started trying to earn my mom's love too. But instead of starving myself, I'd bring home straight A report cards, clean the house spotless each morning, and win every science fair. But it was never what she wanted. "You should direct all that energy into something useful, like fixing your diet," she'd always say. I always knew what she was doing was wrong. But whenever I tried bringing it up to other family members, they would just talk about how my mom had a perfect figure, and I ought to listen to her. So I gaslit myself into thinking it was normal. Until I turned 13, that is. Because that's when I came home to Chloe passed out in the hallway, with an empty bottle of mom's prescription diet pills next to her. My hands trembled as I dialed 911, and I immediately tried to put her in the recovery position. When I heard her whisper, I pressed my ear up to her lips. "I just wanted to lose 5 more pounds for mom's birthday," she said, voice shaking. And when she woke up in the hospital bed, the first thing she asked was whether she looked skinnier. That's when I knew I'd lost my sister forever. After that, I started playing along just to survive. I started skipping breakfast and dinner almost every day, and I made sure to suck in my stomach whenever I was around my mom, just to stop her from screaming at me. But when I turned 15, something shifted. My dad finally came home. You see, he'd been working overseas since I was a child. But one of the first things he did when he came back was file for divorce and full custody. Mom fought it hard, but not even she had an explanation for the state of me and Chloe's medical records. I moved in with Dad and slowly learned to eat normally again. Chloe told the court she wanted to stay with Mom. By senior year, I was healthy, playing volleyball, actually enjoying food. Fast forward to when I turned 18. I hadn't seen my mom in years, and my dad asked if I wanted to spend my birthday with her and my sister. I nodded, not thinking it would be a big deal. And when the day came, I wore loose clothes to avoid comments about my body. But nothing could prepare me for what I saw. The second Chloe answered the door, bile rose in my throat. She looked like those cancer patients you see online. Cheekbones cutting through tissue paper skin, arms like twigs, hair falling out in patches. "Chloe, what the F? Oh my gosh, you've gotten so effing huge," she interrupted. My heart shattered. And before I could respond, Mom appeared behind her. "What have you done to yourself?" she shrieked, grabbing at my stomach. "You were finally getting somewhere, and now look at you. You're disgusting." I tried to leave, but Mom blocked the door. "You're not going anywhere until you drink this," she said, pulling out one of those meal replacement shakes. "It's 200 calories. You need to get back on track right now." When I refused, she tried to physically force it into my mouth. The smell made me gag. It was clearly expired, chunky and rotten. "Mom, stop!" I yelled, but she got Chloe to hold my arms while she tried to pry my mouth open. I was screaming and crying while the shake spilled everywhere. She kept saying, "This is for your own good," while basically waterboarding me with diet products. I managed to break free and run to the bathroom, locking myself in while calling Dad. They pounded on the door, Mom screaming that I was choosing to be ugly and spitting on everything she taught me. Dad called 911 and drove over himself. By the time police arrived, I'd vomited 3 times from the stress and whatever expired chemicals had gotten in my mouth. The police took one look at Chloe and called paramedics for her too. And I didn't know it at the time, but we were about to take revenge on my mom together. The paramedics rushed Chloe onto a stretcher while I stood there shaking, watching my sister's skeletal form disappear into the ambulance. That's when she grabbed my hand with her bony fingers and pulled me close. Her lips barely moved as she whispered something that made my blood run cold. She made me take laxatives this morning too. My stomach dropped. Outside, Mom was screaming at the police officers about her parental rights, waving her arms and putting on a show for the neighbors who'd come out to watch. One officer kept trying to calm her down while another took notes. I climbed into the ambulance with Chloe. The EMT, a young guy with kind eyes, started checking her vitals. His face grew more concerned with each reading. The heart monitor showed dangerous bradycardia. Her heart was barely beating fast enough to keep her alive. My phone buzzed. Mom was following the ambulance in her car, texting me while driving. "You're destroying our family. How could you do this to us?" The EMT muttered something under his breath while recording Chloe's weight. 78 pounds. He shook his head and adjusted the IV drip. At the hospital entrance, everything turned into chaos. Mom screeched to a halt in the parking lot and ran toward us, shouting about her medical power of attorney. She waved papers in the air, demanding to be let through. "I'm her mother. I make all medical decisions for my daughter." That's when Dad stepped forward from where he'd been waiting by the emergency entrance. He held up his own stack of documents. "Actually, I filed emergency paperwork this morning. Judge Martinez signed it an hour ago." Mom's face went white, then red. Dad had known this would happen. He'd been prepared. The hospital staff wheeled Chloe through the automatic doors while Mom tried to follow. Security stepped in to check everyone's documentation. A social worker appeared, a woman in her 30s with a sympathetic smile and a clipboard. "Hi, I'm Sarah from the hospital social services. I need to speak with family members about Chloe's care." She turned to me first, her expression shifting slightly. "You're the sister who called 911? I nodded. "Can you explain why you haven't been in contact with Chloe for 3 years? Why did you abandon her when she was sick?" The question hit me like a punch. I tried to explain about the custody battle, about Mom's restrictions, but Sarah kept writing notes with that same concerned look. Mom jumped on this immediately. "She left us. She chose her father over her family. And now she shows up and causes all this drama." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "We need to start treatment immediately. Who's making medical decisions?" While Dad and Mom argued over paperwork, I had to choose. Stay with Chloe or go give my statement to the police who were waiting to document everything. Mom was already at the intake desk, filling out forms. I could hear her telling the nurse something about me. "My younger daughter has a history of violence. I have texts where she said she wanted to kill me." The nurse's eyebrows rose. Mom pulled out her phone, scrolling through old messages. I remembered those texts, sent when I was 13, right after Chloe's OD. Stupid teenage venting that said things like, "I hate you so much I could kill you," after she'd forced me to weigh myself in front of relatives. Security cameras were everywhere in the hospital. One was pointed directly at the intake area, recording everything. Good, I thought. Let them see Mom's performance. Dad arrived just as Mom found Chloe's assigned doctor, a tired-looking man in scrubs. She immediately launched into her concerns about my mental stability, how I'd shown up after years of no contact, how I'd triggered this whole incident. Behind them, through the glass doors of the trauma bay, I could see Chloe's monitor starting to alarm. Her heart was going into palpitations. The medical team rushed to her side. I ran toward the trauma bay, but the doctor treating Chloe held up his hand. They were pushing medications, adjusting her IV, working to stabilize her arrhythmia. I pressed against the glass, watching helplessly. Behind me, Mom kept talking to anyone who would listen. The intake nurse was typing notes into the computer. I caught a glimpse of the screen. "Sister has anger issues per mother." When Dad's lawyer arrived 20 minutes later, I felt a moment of relief. Finally, someone who could help sort this out. But his face was grim as he pulled Dad aside. "We have a problem. She's been recording conversations." Mom smiled, that cold smile I remembered from childhood. She held up her phone again. "I've been documenting everything for the past month. Every interaction, every phone call." She hit play on a recording. My voice filled the waiting room, edited, clipped to remove context. "I hate you enough to hurt you." The security guard shifted uncomfortably. Sarah, the social worker, made more notes. Even Dad's lawyer looked concerned. "The thing is," the lawyer said, quietly, "these recordings could complicate everything. If she's been building a case..." An alarm went off in the trauma bay. Through the glass, I watched the medical team working frantically over Chloe. Someone mentioned the word code. My sister had briefly flatlined, but they'd brought her back. 2 police officers entered the waiting area, one of them holding an evidence bag. Inside, I could see containers from Mom's purse, the same meal replacement shakes she'd tried to force on me. The officer examined one closely. "Ma'am, these products expired in 2019. And this one..." He held up a container with a skull and crossbones warning label. "This hasn't been legal for sale since 2016. Where did you get these?" Mom's composure cracked slightly. "Those are prescription supplements from my doctor." "Which doctor?" the officer asked, pulling out his notepad. Before she could answer, another official arrived. "Child Protective Services." The woman introduced herself and looked directly at Dad. "We've received a report of medical neglect and endangerment. We'll need to investigate both parents." Dad's face crumpled. He'd thought he was saving us, doing the right thing by fighting for custody. Now he was under investigation too. The next few hours blurred together. Chloe was stabilized and moved to the ICU. Mom managed to convince several staff members that I was a danger to my sister's recovery. She showed them my old social media posts, screenshots of me eating pizza at college, parties. "Look at her glorifying binge eating. She's a terrible influence on someone with an eating disorder." Sarah, the social worker, listened to everything, occasionally glancing at me with that same concerned expression. By the time visiting hours were established, the hospital had restricted my access to Chloe. Only parents could visit, and only one at a time. Mom's phone rang. She answered it with fake tears in her voice, playing up the worried mother act. I recognized the voice on the other end, my old volleyball coach from high school. "Yes, Coach Johnson, I'm so worried about her. She's having some kind of breakdown. Maybe you could talk to her? She always listened to you." The manipulation was spreading. Mom was recruiting allies, building her narrative. She ended the call and immediately made another, this time to someone from her Pilates class who worked at the local news station. Dad's lawyer pulled out a thick folder, reviewing documents. His frown deepened as he found something. "There's a court order here from 3 years ago. She was granted sole medical decision-making authority." He showed it to Dad. "You never formally contested this?" Dad shook his head, confused. "I didn't even know about it. I was overseas when—" He stopped, checking the date. "This was filed 1 day before I got back. 1 day before I filed for divorce." Mom had been planning for years. My phone started buzzing with notifications. I'd posted on social media asking for support, sharing what had happened. But the comments weren't what I expected. Mom's friends were flooding in with concerned messages. "Your mother is worried sick about you. This vendetta against your family needs to stop. Get help before you hurt someone." She'd mobilized her entire network against me. Each comment painted me as unstable, violent, dangerous. Some even mentioned my history of threatening behavior, referencing those old texts Mom had shown everyone. I tried to respond, to explain, but more comments poured in faster than I could type. Someone had screenshotted my post and shared it in a local mom's group with the caption, "This poor mother dealing with a violent daughter." Dad put his hand on my shoulder. "Don't engage. You're just giving her more ammunition." But the damage was spreading. My phone rang. Coach Johnson, my old volleyball coach. I answered, hoping for support. "Hey kiddo, I just talked to your mom. She's really worried about you. Maybe we should all sit down for some family therapy? I know a good counselor." Even Coach had been turned. I hung up without responding. The next morning, I woke up at Dad's house to find a news van parked outside. The local morning show was running a segment on family disputes and hospital drama. Mom had given an interview, looking perfectly put together and tearful as she described her troubled daughter, who'd caused a scene at a family gathering. The reporter, who I recognized as someone from Mom's Pilates class, didn't ask any hard questions. Nothing about the expired diet shakes or Chloe's condition. Just Mom playing the victim for the cameras. Inside the hospital, things were getting worse. When I arrived to check on Chloe, security stopped me at the entrance. There was a new notice in the system. A restraining order had been filed. Mom appeared from around the corner with official papers. "It's for everyone's safety," she said loudly enough for the security guard to hear. "My daughter has been making threats, harassing our family. I have evidence." She showed the guard her phone, the edited recordings, the old texts, statements from her concerned friends. The security guard looked at me differently now, his hand moving closer to his radio. Dad's lawyer reviewed the restraining order paperwork. "It's temporary, but if it's granted," he shook his head, "you won't be able to come within 500 feet of your mother or visit Chloe in the hospital." Mom smiled that cold smile again. She'd won this round. That evening, Dad's girlfriend called him. I could hear her through the phone, saying she couldn't be involved in such a toxic situation. She was breaking up with him. The stress was affecting everyone. I made a decision. If Mom wanted to play dirty, I could too. I remembered she had a sister, Anne, who she'd cut off years ago. Nobody in the family talked about why, but I'd found Anne on social media. She lived 2 states away but had been following the situation online. I sent her a message. "I need to know what happened between you and my mother." Her response came quickly. "I've been waiting years for someone to ask." We arranged a video call for that night. What Anne told me changed everything. She pulled out old diary entries from when they were teenagers, pages describing forced dieting, pills their mother made them take, competitions between sisters that went too far. "She did the same things to me," Anne said, showing me a photo from high school. But when I tried to report it, she convinced everyone I was jealous of her, said I was making it up for attention. One diary entry made me gasp. Anne had written about their mother's diet pills, how my mom had started stealing them and giving them to Anne, the same brand I'd seen in that evidence bag. "She learned it all from our mother," Anne said. "And when our mom died, your mother kept her med stash, said it was for sentimental reasons." I had ammunition now, but using it would mean war. The next morning, I tried to record Mom during a chance encounter at the hospital parking lot. I held my phone low, pretending to text while she approached, but she spotted it immediately. Her entire demeanor changed. Tears appeared instantly as she clutched her chest. "Why are you doing this to our family?" she wailed, loud enough for everyone in the parking lot to hear. "Haven't you heard us enough?" People stopped to stare. Some pulled out their own phones to record. Mom's performance was perfect. The concerned mother being persecuted by her unstable daughter. When I lowered my phone, she smirked for just a second before the tears returned. That afternoon, the temporary restraining order was granted. I couldn't visit Chloe, couldn't come near Mom, couldn't even be in the same building. The judge had reviewed Mom's evidence, the recordings, the texts, the statements from concerned citizens. I was legally barred from seeing my dying sister. Dad's lawyer put it bluntly. She's been planning this for years. Every interaction, every text, every family gathering, she's been building her case. But what about Chloe? I asked. She needs help. Your mother has legal custody and medical decision-making authority. Unless we can prove she's actively harming Chloe. She is. Those expired shakes, the laxatives Chloe mentioned, it's your word against hers. And right now, she has a restraining order against you and character witnesses saying you're unstable. I realized then what I was up against. This wasn't just about Mom being controlling or abusive. She'd built an entire system to protect herself, to ensure she could never be held accountable. And she'd used my own anger, my own teenage mistakes, as the foundation. But I wasn't the same scared 13-year-old who'd sent those angry texts. I had resources now. I had Anne's testimony. I had Dad's support, even if it was costing him everything. Most importantly, I had the truth. The war for Chloe's life was just beginning, and I finally understood what we were really fighting. Not just Mom, but years of careful manipulation, a network of enablers, and a system that believed a well-dressed mother over a desperate daughter. I thought back to Chloe's whispered words in the ambulance. She made me take laxatives this morning too. My sister was counting on me, and this time, I wouldn't let her down. Mom's network moved faster than I'd anticipated. Within hours of the restraining order being granted, I received notification that my college had placed me on academic probation, pending investigation into concerning behavior. The email cited anonymous reports about my violent tendencies and suggested I seek counseling before returning to campus. I sat in Dad's kitchen, staring at my laptop screen while he paced behind me. His phone hadn't stopped ringing. Clients canceling appointments, his boss suggesting he take time off to handle his family situation. Mom's influence was spreading like poison through every aspect of our lives. Anne called that evening with more revelations. She'd been digging through old photos and found something disturbing. Pictures from their childhood where their mother had marked their bodies with pen, circling problem areas that needed fixing. In one photo, Mom stood proudly next to a visibly malnourished Anne, holding a certificate from some bogus weight loss camp. She kept these as trophies, Anne said, her voice shaking. Even after I begged her to throw them away, I asked Anne to scan and send everything. We needed documentation, proof of the generational pattern. But as the files came through, I noticed something odd in the metadata. The scan dates were recent, just last week. When I questioned Anne about it, she hesitated. Your mother contacted me a month ago, she admitted. Said she was worried about you, that you were showing signs of mental illness. She wanted to know if there was family history she should be aware of. My blood ran cold. Mom had been laying groundwork everywhere, planting seeds of doubt even with Anne. I wondered how many other people she'd reached out to, how many more surprises were waiting. The next morning brought another blow. Madison, Chloe's friend who'd been dating Mom's lawyer, showed up at Dad's door. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. I need to tell you something, she said, glancing nervously over her shoulder. About the lawyer, we're not really dating. Your mom hired him to get close to me, to get information about Chloe. She explained how the lawyer had approached her at the gym, how their chance meetings had all been orchestrated. Mom had been using Madison as an unwitting spy for months, gathering intelligence about Chloe's true condition, her feelings about the family situation. She knew Chloe was getting worse, Madison said. She knew and she didn't care. All she wanted was ammunition against you. I asked Madison if she'd testify to this, but she shook her head. I signed something. I thought it was just a confidentiality agreement for his law firm, but she pulled out a crumpled document. It basically says I can't discuss anything related to their professional relationship, or I'll owe $50,000. Dad's lawyer reviewed the document and confirmed it was legally binding. Mom had thought of everything. That afternoon, I decided to visit the hospital despite the restraining order. I couldn't get near Chloe, but I could talk to the staff, try to understand her condition. I parked across the street and watched the entrance, waiting for shift change when I might catch a nurse or doctor leaving. That's when I saw Mom exit with someone I didn't recognize. A woman in expensive clothes carrying a designer bag. They were laughing, Mom touching the woman's arm familiarly. I followed them to a nearby coffee shop, staying far enough back to avoid violating the restraining order. Through the window, I watched Mom pull out papers, pointing to different sections while the woman nodded. The woman signed something, then handed Mom an envelope. It looked thick, like cash. I snapped photos with my phone, zooming in as much as possible. When they left, I waited a few minutes before entering the coffee shop. The barista, a college-aged guy with gauges, was wiping down their table. Hey, weird question, I said, trying to sound casual. Those two women who just left, do they come here often? He shrugged. The blonde one's been coming in a lot lately. Always meeting different people, always with paperwork. Figured she was in real estate or something. I thanked him and left, mind racing. Mom was meeting people, exchanging money. But for what? The answer came that evening when Dad received a call from his bank. Someone had tried to access his accounts using old information. Security questions about his mother's maiden name, his first pet, Things Mom would know. The bank had flagged it as suspicious, but it was clear what she was trying to do. "She's trying to drain me," Dad said, slumping in his chair. "Make it so I can't afford lawyers." We spent the night changing all his passwords, adding security alerts, calling credit agencies. But the damage was already spreading. Dad's credit cards started getting declined. When he called to check, he discovered someone had reported them as stolen. The cards were canceled. New ones would take 7 to 10 business days. Mom was systematically destroying our ability to fight back. Sarah, the hospital social worker, called the next day. She wanted to meet with me, said she had concerns about Chloe's care that she couldn't discuss over the phone. We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a diner downtown. She arrived looking nervous, constantly checking her phone. When she sat down, she slid a folder across the table. "I shouldn't be showing you this," she said quietly, "but something's not right." The folder contained Chloe's intake forms, multiple versions of them, each. One had different information, different weights recorded, different medical histories, different emergency contacts, all signed by Mom, all dated the same day. "She kept changing her story," Sarah explained. "First Chloe was 90 pounds, then 85, then 78. First the eating disorder started last year, then 3 years ago, then in childhood. It's like she was trying to find the version that would get the response she wanted." I studied the forms, noting the progression. Mom had been testing the system, seeing what would trigger what response. The final version, the one that got Chloe admitted to the ICU, painted her as critically ill but placed all blame on my recent visit. "There's more," Sarah said. She pulled out her phone, showing me photos she'd taken of the hospital gift shop. "Your mother's been buying things, lots of things. Flowers, cards, chocolates, but they never make it to Chloe's room." The photos showed Mom at the register, purchasing elaborate bouquets, stuffed animals, balloons, hundreds of dollars worth of gifts. "She gives them to the staff," Sarah continued. "Different nurses, doctors, administrators, always with a card about how grateful she is for their care of her daughter." Mom was buying loyalty, creating a network of hospital staff who saw her as the devoted, generous mother. No wonder everyone seemed to take her side. Sarah leaned forward. "I've been in social work for 10 years. I've seen abusive parents before. But this?" She shook her head. "This is something else. She's not just manipulating the system. She's orchestrating it." I asked if Sarah would document this, help us build a case. She bit her lip, looking conflicted. "I want to help, but she's already complained about me to my supervisor. Said I was showing bias, not being objective. One more complaint and I could lose my job." Another ally neutralized. Mom's chess game was flawless. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Chloe, alone in that hospital room, probably being fed more lies by Mom. I needed to get a message to her somehow, let her know I was fighting for her. Then I remembered. Chloe and I had shared an email account years ago, back when we were kids. We used it to write stories together, taking turns adding paragraphs. Mom never knew about it. The password was our shared middle name plus our birthdays. I logged in, heart pounding. The account was still active. And there in the drafts folder was a new message. From Chloe, dated yesterday. "I know you're trying to help. Mom says you're sick, that you're trying to hurt us. But I remember what you did when I took those pills. You saved me. She's making me take more things. Different pills. She says they're vitamins, but they make me feel worse. I'm scared. Please don't give up on me." I sobbed reading it. Chloe was reaching out the only way she could, through our childhood connection. I started typing a response, telling her about Dad's emergency custody filing, about the evidence we were gathering. But before I could finish, the account logged me out. When I tried to log back in, the password had been changed. Mom had found it. She'd probably been monitoring it all along, waiting to see if I'd try to contact Chloe. Now she had evidence of me violating the restraining order. Even digital contact was prohibited. Sure enough, the next morning Dad's lawyer called. Mom had filed an emergency motion. She claimed I was stalking Chloe online, trying to manipulate a vulnerable patient. She wanted the restraining order extended and criminal charges filed. The hearing was set for the next day. Dad's lawyer said we needed character witnesses, people who could testify to my stability. But when we started making calls, we discovered Mom had already poisoned those wells too. My college advisor said she'd received concerning information about my behavior. Former teammates from volleyball said they'd been told I was going through something, and it might be best to keep their distance. Even the manager at the restaurant where I'd worked summers said someone had called asking about my history of violence with customers. None of it was true, but the seeds of doubt were planted. Who would testify for someone with such a questionable reputation? In desperation, I reached out to the one person Mom might not have thought to influence, my high school chemistry teacher, Mr. Peterson. He'd retired last year and moved to the coast. When I called, he listened to the whole story without interrupting. "I always wondered about your home situation," he said finally. "You and Chloe both had signs, but your mother was so involved, so concerned. She fooled us all." He agreed to write a character statement, but warned it might not be enough. "She's had years to build her narrative. You've had days." The night before the hearing, I sat with Dad going through everything we'd gathered. Anne's testimony about their childhood, the expired diet shakes, Sarah's observations about the gift shop purchases, Madison's revelation about the lawyer. It felt like a lot, but Dad's lawyer wasn't optimistic. "It's all circumstantial," he said. "She'll have explanations for everything. And with her character witnesses versus your limited support." He didn't need to finish. We were going to lose. That's when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Chloe's sister?" The voice was male, young, nervous. "Who is this?" "I'm Jake. I'm a nurse at the hospital. Night shift. I need to talk to you about your sister." We arranged to meet at a 24-hour restaurant near the hospital. Jake arrived in scrubs, looking exhausted and scared. He kept glancing around like he expected Mom to appear. "I could lose my license for this," he said, "but I can't stay quiet anymore." He pulled out his phone, showing me photos he'd taken during his shifts. Chloe's medication chart. The doses were all wrong. Medications that should be given with food were scheduled for empty stomach. Doses that were far higher than recommended for someone her weight. "Your mother insists on being present for all medication administration," Jake explained. "She says Chloe is resistant, needs encouragement." But he showed me another photo. Mom's purse, open on the bedside table. Inside, visible among the usual purse contents, were pills. Different colors, different shapes. No prescription bottles. "She adds things," Jake whispered. "I've seen her. Crushes pills into the apple juice. Stirs powder into the protein shakes. When I questioned it once, she said they were vitamins Chloe's regular doctor prescribed. But I've been a nurse for 5 years. Those aren't vitamins." I asked if he'd reported this. He shook his head. "To who?" "She's friends with the charge nurse. She brings coffee for the night shift supervisor. Everyone loves her. They'd think I was crazy." But Jake had been documenting everything. Times, dates, photos. He'd even managed to pocket one of the pills Mom had tried to give Chloe, planning to have it tested. "Your sister is getting worse because of those pills," he said. "Her body can't process them properly in her condition. But the doctors just see an eating disorder patient who isn't recovering. They don't look deeper." I asked if he'd testify at the hearing. He paled. I can't. If this gets out, if she finds out I talked to you." I understood. Mom's reach extended. Everywhere. But Jake gave me the photos, the documentation. It was something. As we left the restaurant, Jake grabbed my arm. "There's something else. Your mom's been talking about transferring Chloe. Someplace in Arizona. Says it's a specialty clinic, but I looked it up. It doesn't exist. The address she gave is just desert." My blood ran cold. Mom was planning to make Chloe disappear. I called Dad's lawyer immediately, but he was skeptical about using Jake's information. Illegally obtained evidence could backfire spectacularly. The hearing was in 6 hours. We had evidence of Mom's abuse, but no legal way to use it. We had witnesses too scared to testify. We had a system completely under Mom's control. But we also had something Mom didn't expect. Chloe herself. Because in all her planning, all her manipulation, Mom had made one mistake. She'd assumed Chloe would always be her perfect, compliant skeleton. She'd never considered that Chloe might find her own way to fight back. The draft email Chloe had left wasn't just a cry for help. Hidden in the text, using our old childhood code, she'd left information. The names of Mom's pills, the times she was forced to take them, details Mom had shared about her plans, thinking Chloe was too sick to remember. Chloe had been gathering evidence too, and she'd found a way to share it, even from her hospital bed, even under Mom's constant watch. The hearing was in 6 hours. Mom thought she had won, but the war for Chloe's life was far from over. The emergency hearing arrived faster than expected. At 6 a.m., Dad's phone rang with notification that the judge had moved it up to 8 a.m. due to urgent circumstances. We scrambled to get ready, Dad's hands shaking as he knotted his tie. The courthouse steps were slick with morning dew when we arrived. Mom was already there, surrounded by her support network. 3 women from her Pilates class, the volleyball coach, even the reporter who'd interviewed her. They formed a protective circle around her as she dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Inside the courtroom, I spotted Madison sitting in the back row. She wouldn't make eye contact. The lawyer she'd been dating sat at Mom's table, adjusting his cufflinks and reviewing notes. Dad's lawyer looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes from the all-night preparation. Judge Catherine Winters entered, a stern woman in her 60s who'd overseen the original custody case years ago. She reviewed the restraining order extension request, while Mom's lawyer presented the evidence. The edited recordings, the violated email account, testimonies from concerned citizens about my unstable behavior. When it came time for our defense, Dad's lawyer stood slowly. He presented Anne's diary entries, the photos of the expired diet shakes, Jake's documentation of the medication irregularities. But Judge Winters kept frowning, shaking her head at each piece of evidence. "This appears to be hearsay and illegally obtained." "Information," she said, looking directly at me. "Young lady, did you access your mother's email without permission?" I opened my mouth to explain about Chloe's hidden message, but Dad's lawyer touched my arm. Any admission would only strengthen Mom's case. The judge continued reviewing documents for 20 minutes. Mom sat perfectly still, occasionally wiping away a tear. Her performance was flawless. the concerned mother trying to protect her sick daughter from a vindictive sibling. I'm granting the restraining order extension, Judge Winters announced. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the district attorney for potential criminal charges regarding cyber harassment and stalking. My stomach dropped. Criminal charges meant I could face jail time. But then the courtroom door burst open. Sarah, the social worker, rushed in carrying a thick folder. Her face was flushed, hair disheveled like she'd been running. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but I have urgent information regarding the welfare of the minor child in question. Judge Winters looked annoyed but nodded for her to continue. Sarah approached the bench, handing over the folder. These are Chloe's medical records from the past 72 hours. Her condition has deteriorated rapidly. She's developed refeeding syndrome from improper nutrition management. The attending physician believes someone has been interfering with her treatment plan. Mom's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. This woman has shown clear bias. Sit down, counselor, Judge Winters snapped. She flipped through the medical records, her expression growing more concerned with each page. Sarah continued. There's more. Hospital security footage shows Mrs. Mom's last name, adding unidentified substances to Chloe's feeding tube. When confronted by nursing staff, she claimed they were prescribed supplements, but no doctor has any record of prescribing them. The courtroom erupted. Mom's supporters started whispering frantically. Mom herself stood up, pointing at me. This is her doing. She's turned everyone against me. I'm trying to save my daughter. Judge Winters banged her gavel. Order. Mrs. Mom's last name. Sit down immediately. Sarah pulled out her phone, showing security footage to the judge. Even from where I sat, I could see Mom crushing pills into Chloe's feeding bag. The timestamp showed it was from yesterday, after visiting hours. Your Honor, Sarah said, Child Protective Services is requesting immediate intervention. Chloe's life is in danger. The judge's face hardened. She turned to Mom's lawyer. Counselor, can you explain your client's actions in this footage? He shuffled papers nervously. I wasn't aware of this evidence. I need time to consult with my client. You'll have plenty of time, Judge Winters said. Bailiff, please take Mrs. Mom's last name into custody pending investigation for child endangerment. Mom's scream echoed through the courtroom. No, you don't understand. She needs those supplements. She'll get fat without them. I'm saving her. As the bailiff approached, Mom tried to run. She knocked over her lawyer's briefcase, papers flying everywhere. Her supporters scattered as she pushed past them toward the door. But there were two more bailiffs waiting. They caught her arms, securing handcuffs as she continued screaming about saving Chloe from obesity. In the chaos, I noticed Madison crying in the back row. She stood up and approached Dad's lawyer, pulling out her phone. I recorded her, she said quietly. The lawyer, at dinner last week. He was coaching me on what to tell people about Chloe's condition. I know I signed that agreement, but... She looked at Mom being led away. I can't let Chloe die for this. Judge Winters called for order again. The courtroom slowly settled. She looked at me, her expression softer now. Young lady, while your methods were inappropriate and illegal, it's clear you were trying to protect your sister. I'm dismissing the restraining order and recommending the DA decline to pursue charges. However, she held up a finger, you are to have no contact with your mother pending the criminal investigation. Is that understood? I nodded, tears streaming down my face. As for Chloe's care, the judge continued, I'm granting emergency custody to Mr. Dad's last name, effective immediately. CPS will provide oversight and support. The rest happened in a blur. Mom was taken to county jail for booking. Dad rushed to the hospital to take over Chloe's care decisions. Sarah promised to expedite the custody paperwork. Madison handed over her recordings to Dad's lawyer. Consequences be damned. At the hospital, I was finally allowed to see Chloe. She looked even worse than before. Her skin had a grayish tint, machines monitoring every vital sign. The nurse explained that Mom's pills had been a dangerous cocktail of diuretics, laxatives, and expired stimulants that had pushed Chloe's already fragile system to the brink. Dad sat on one side of her bed, me on the other. We didn't speak. There was nothing to say. We'd won the legal battle, but Chloe was barely alive. That evening, Jake found me in the hospital cafeteria. He sat down across from me, sliding over a test results printout. That med I pocketed? It tested positive for a substance that was banned in 2016. Same stuff that killed 3 people at that weight loss clinic in Nevada. He shook his head. Your mom was giving her poison. I stared at the results. All those years of Mom insisting she was helping us, saving us from obesity. She'd been slowly killing Chloe instead. Over the next days, more truth emerged. Police searched Mom's house and found stockpiles of expired diet products, some dating back decades. Anne flew in to provide testimony about their mother's similar behavior. The prosecutor built a case for attempted murder, though Dad's lawyer warned it would likely be pleaded down to aggravated child abuse. Mom's network crumbled quickly. The Pilates friends distanced themselves. The volleyball coach called to apologize, saying he'd been manipulated. The reporter faced criticism for biased coverage. One by one, Mom's carefully constructed support system abandoned her. But the damage was done. Chloe remained in critical condition. The years of malnutrition had damaged her heart, her bones, her organs. Doctors spoke in careful terms about management rather than recovery. I spent every allowed moment at the hospital. Dad took leave from work, his boss suddenly understanding after Mom's arrest made the news. We took shifts sitting with Chloe, reading to her, playing her favorite music. On the 5th day, she opened her eyes. Her lips moved, trying to form words. I leaned close. "Is Mom coming?" she whispered. My heart broke. Even now, even after everything, she was still that little girl seeking Mom's approval. "No," I said gently. "Mom can't come." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "Did I do something wrong? Did I gain weight?" Dad squeezed her hand. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Mom is sick. She hurt you. We're going to take care of you now." The deprogramming would take months, the doctors warned. Physical recovery even longer. Chloe had to relearn how to eat, how to see food as nourishment rather than the enemy. She had to unlearn years of Mom's poisonous teachings. 2 weeks later, Mom's lawyer contacted Dad. She wanted to make a deal. She'd plead guilty to child endangerment if we agreed to supervised visitation once she completed treatment. Dad threw the letter in the trash. "She doesn't get to negotiate," he said. "Not after what she did." The prosecutor agreed. With the evidence we'd gathered, Mom faced up to 15 years in prison. The trial would be brutal, but necessary. Chloe was transferred to a specialized eating disorder facility after 3 weeks in the ICU. The place was expensive. Dad's savings were gone, my college fund depleted, but Aunt Julie surprised us by offering to help with costs. "I should have seen it," she said during one visit. "All those years I thought your mom was just strict. I didn't realize." She trailed off, guilt evident on her face. Madison visited once Chloe was stable enough for non-family visitors. She brought flowers and an apology. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I thought I was helping. Your mom made it sound like you were the problem." Chloe just stared at her, too exhausted for forgiveness or anger. The facility had strict rules. No outside food, limited visiting hours. Group therapy was mandatory, individual counseling daily. Chloe hated it at first, begging Dad to take her home. But slowly, incrementally, she began to engage. I returned to college after the prosecutor assured me I wouldn't face charges. My professors were understanding about my missed assignments. The academic probation was lifted once the administration learned the truth. But focusing on studies felt impossible with Chloe still fighting for her life. Mom's trial date was set for 6 months out. Her lawyer kept filing motions, trying to delay. From jail, she sent letters to anyone who would listen, claiming she was a victim of a conspiracy. The letters were rambling, paranoid, insisting that the diet industry had abandoned her for telling the truth about obesity. Some of her former friends visited her, but they all left shaken. Without her careful image management, Mom's mask had slipped entirely. She ranted about weight and ugliness, about how she'd failed to save her daughters from fatness. Even her most loyal supporters couldn't deny her obsession had crossed into madness. 3 months into treatment, Chloe had a breakthrough. During family therapy, she looked directly at me for the first time since the hospital. "I knew," she said quietly. "I knew the pills were making me sick. But I took them anyway because at least when I was dying, she paid attention to me." The therapist guided us through that session, helping us unpack years of trauma. Dad cried, the first time I'd seen him break down completely. We were all broken in different ways, all carrying scars from Mom's abuse. Progress wasn't linear. Chloe had setbacks, days where she refused to eat, nights where she exercised compulsively in her room. The facility staff was patient but firm. Recovery would take time. Anne became a regular presence, flying in monthly to support us. She shared her own recovery story, how it had taken her decades to develop a healthy relationship with food and her body. Her presence helped Chloe see that healing was possible. 5 months after Mom's arrest, the prosecutor called with an update. Mom had agreed to plead guilty to multiple counts of child endangerment and assault. She'd serve a minimum of 8 years, maximum of 12. No possibility of contact with Chloe until she turned 25, and then only if Chloe initiated it. "It's over," Dad said after hanging up. But we all knew it wasn't. Not really. The facility recommended Chloe stay for a full year. Insurance covered some costs, but Dad worked overtime to manage the rest. I took a part-time job, sending what I could. Aunt Julie organized a small fundraiser through her church. Even Madison contributed, still carrying guilt over her role in Mom's schemes. As Chloe's weight slowly increased to healthy levels, she began looking more like herself again. The hollow cheeks filled out, her hair grew back thicker, but the biggest change was in her eyes. Slowly, carefully, life returned to them. Mom's sentencing happened on a rainy Tuesday. We didn't attend. Dad said it would only give her the attention she craved. Instead, we spent the day with Chloe at the facility, playing board games and watching movies. Normal family activities we'd never been allowed before. The news reported Mom's statement to the court. No remorse, only insistence that society would thank her one day for trying to save her daughters from obesity.